Hello, everyone. Why literature is hierarchical. Now, before we get to that, if you would like to support this channel, my book, The Ecstasy and the Ignominy, is available, and there's a link in the description section. And it is essentially a combination of Anna Karenina, A Tale of Two Cities, a little bit of Crime and Punishment, and it has a very Melvillian, Dickensian, Shakespearean kind of style. And so, if you're interested, that is linked in the description section along with all of my other books. Um, Now, I truly believe that literature is hierarchical. I don't believe that all art is equal or that all literature is equal. Because here's the thing, I don't believe you can have true beauty if everything is on the same playing field. You can't have true beauty without ugliness. Um, you cannot have great writers or great artists without bad writers and artists. Um, that's what gives literature its beauty. The fact that there are some things that contrast with it, that there are some works of art, some works of literature that contrast with it that don't quite meet that standard. Um, that's what gives literature its beauty and power. Um, you cannot have, for example, I think, true praise that means anything if criticism doesn't also exist to balance it. So, no, I do think that, for example, in literature, there is a hierarchy of what I would call aesthetics. That some literature is more beautiful um, than other kinds of literature. That that it takes a certain kind of talented mind to create beautiful literature, and not everyone has that ability. So, in that sense, there is a hierarchy to aesthetics within literature in terms of the overall lyrical quality as well as the capabilities of individual writers and artists. And now that's this has nothing to do with moral worth or human dignity. This is purely an aesthetic hierarchy. So I want to make that very clear. Um, but um, but yes, if all literature is the same, if all art is the same, um, then the very concept of greatness collapses if everything is ultimately subjective. The whole concept of beauty collapses because you can only again have beauty if you have ugliness um, to contrast with it. And the idea that all art is equal or that all art is the same, I personally don't think holds any water. For example, you would never say someone someone who bangs two trash cans together that is the same as Mozart. You would never say that. I do think that even though there are a lot of subject there's a lot of subjectivity within literature and in art, but to me, you can clearly tell the difference that banging two trash cans together, that's not the same as Mozart. Um, Now, Mozart might not be to your taste, to your personal taste, but there's a difference between your personal aesthetic, your own personal what you might prefer, and what is objectively good and bad art. You can recognize that something is of high quality, even if it doesn't meet your personal aesthetic in some cases. And I think a lot of people fail to recognize this. But the idea of just going, oh well, I'm just going to like what I like. Everything's subjective. To me, that devalues art and it takes away the ultimate purpose of art in many ways. Like for example, I recently was brought to my attention that this book called Flesh, which we've won some kind of prize for being great literature, but I read it. I mean, I didn't read all of it. I read some of the opening paragraphs of it, and I thought it was some of the worst literature I had ever read. I mean, the language was truly hideous. There was no lyricism in it at all. It was crude, literal, simplistic. The sentences were clunky. There was almost no punctuation. There was no beauty in it at all. But some people, I think, equate shock value with great literature. But just because something has shock value, that doesn't mean it is aesthetically pleasant or musical or well crafted. Um, Giving an award like that to giving a prestigious award to a book like that, I think, is a crime against art, against literature. Um, People, critics like that are confusing being transgressive with making great art, which it's not the same thing. And to me, if that's what it takes, if that's what you need to do in order to win a prize, then I personally don't want it. To me, I think some people have become so aesthetically blind, so to speak, to great art through years of being exposed to bad art that they can no longer recognize it. They are completely and utterly blind. They are aesthetically illiterate in some sense. And so, to me, the only way to actually give true art and literature meaning um, is if there is a hierarchy within art. If some art is truly greater than other kinds of art, if some literature is truly greater than other kinds of literature, to me, that's the only way to give it meaning, is for that hierarchy to exist. Um, and so that's what I'll leave you with for today. Um, Again, if you would like to support this channel, my books are linked in the description section. And until next time, goodbye.